The Birth Time of the Gods by Frank Rinder. Coffee Break Collection 22, Days Gone By. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Avai in August 2019. The Birth Time of the Gods. Before a time was, and while yet the world was uncreated, chaos reigned. The earth and the waters, the light and the darkness, the stars and the firmament were intermingled in a vapory liquid. All things were formless and confused. No creature existed. Phantom shapes moved as clouds on the ruffled surface of a sea. It was the birth time of the gods. The first deity sprang from an immense bulrush bud, which rose, spear-like, in the midst of the boundless disorder. Other gods were born, but 3 generations passed before the actual separation of the atmosphere from the more solid earth. Finally, where the tip of the bulrush points upward, the heavenly spirits appeared. From this time their kingdom was divided from the lower world, where chaos still prevailed. To the 4th pair of gods it was given to create the earth. These 2 beings were the powerful god of the air, Izanagi, and the fair goddess of the clouds, Izanami. From them sprang all life. Now Izanagi and Izanami wandered on the floating bridge of heaven. This bridge spanned the gulf between heaven and the unformed world. It was upheld in the air, and it stood secure. The god of the air spoke to the goddess of the clouds, "There must needs be a kingdom beneath us. Let us visit it." When he had so said, he plunged his jeweled spear into the seething mass below. The drops that fell from the point of the spear congealed, and became the island of Onogoro. Thereupon the earth-makers descended, and called up a high mountain peak, on whose summit could rest one end of the heavenly bridge, and around which the whole world should revolve. The wisdom of the heavenly spirit had decreed that Izanagi should be a man, and Izanami a woman, and these 2 deities decided to wed and dwell together on the earth. But, as befitted their august birth, the wooing must be solemn. Izanagi skirted the base of the mountain to the right, Izanami turned to the left. When the goddess of the clouds saw the god of the air approaching afar off, she cried, enraptured, "Ah, what a fair and lovely youth!" Then Izanagi exclaimed, "Ah, what a fair and lovely maiden!" As they met, they clasped hands, and the marriage was accomplished. But for some unknown cause the union did not prove as happy as the god and goddess had hoped. They continued their work of creation, but Awaji, the island that rose from the deep, was little more than a barren waste, and their firstborn son, Hiruko, was a weakling. The earth-makers placed him in a little boat woven of reeds, and left him to the mercy of wind and tide. In deep grief, Izanagi and Izanami recrossed the floating bridge, and came to the place where the heavenly spirits hold eternal audience. From them they learned that Izanagi should have been the first to speak, when the gods met round the base of the pillar of earth. They must woo and wed anew. On their return to earth, Izanagi, as before, went to the right, and Izanami to the left of the mountain. But now, when they met, Izanagi exclaimed, "Ah, what a fair and lovely maiden!" And Izanami joyfully responded, "Ah, what a fair and lovely youth!" They clasped hands once more, and their happiness began. They created the 8 large islands of the kingdom of Japan. First, the luxuriant island of the dragonfly, the great Yamato; then Tsukushi, the white sun youth; Iyo, the lovely princess, and many more. The rocky islands of the archipelago were formed by the foam of the rolling breakers, as they dashed on the coastlines of the islands already created. Thus China and the remaining lands and continents of the world came into existence. Now were born to Izanagi and Izanami the ruler of the rivers, the deity of the mountains, and later the god of the trees, and a goddess to whom was entrusted the care of tender plants and herbs. Then Izanagi and Izanami said, "We have created the mighty kingdom of the 8 islands, with mountains, rivers, and trees, yet another divinity there must be, who shall guard and rule this fair world." As they spoke, a daughter was born to them. Her beauty was dazzling, and her regal bearing betokened that her throne should be set high above the clouds. She was none other than Amaterasu, the heaven-illuminating spirit. Izanagi and Izanami rejoiced greatly when they beheld her face, and exclaimed, "Our daughter shall dwell in the blue plain of high heaven, and from there she shall direct the universe." So they led her to the summit of the mountain, and over the wondrous bridge. The heavenly spirits were joyful when they saw Amaterasu, and said, "You shall mount into the soft blue of the sky, your brilliancy shall illumine, and your sweet smile shall gladden, the eternal land and all the world. Fleecy clouds shall be your handmaidens, and sparkling dewdrops your messengers of peace." The next child of Izanagi and Izanami was a son, and as he also was beautiful, with the dreamlike beauty of the evening, they placed him in the heavens, as co-ruler with his sister Amaterasu. His name was Tsukuyomi, the moon god. The god Susanoo is another son of the 2 deities, who wooed and wed around the base of the pillar of earth. Unlike his brother and sister, he was fond of the shadow and the gloom. When he wept, the grass on the mountainside withered, the flowers were blighted, and men died. Izanagi had little joy in this son, nevertheless he made him ruler of the ocean. Now that the world was created, the happy life of the god of the air and the goddess of the clouds was over. The consumer, the god of fire, was born, and Izanami died. She vanished into the deep solitudes of the kingdom of the trees, in the country of Ki, and disappeared thence into the lower regions. Izanagi was sorely troubled because Izanami had been taken from him, and he descended in pursuit of her to the portals of the shadowy kingdom where sunshine is unknown. Izanami would fain have left that place to rejoin Izanagi on the beautiful earth. Her spirit came to meet him, and in urgent and tender words besought him not to seek her in those cavernous regions. But the bold god would not be warned. He pressed forward, and, by the light struck from his comb, he sought for his loved one long and earnestly. Grim forms rose to confront him, but he passed them by with kingly disdain. Sounds as of the wailing of lost souls struck his ear, but still he persisted. After endless search he found his Izanami lying in an attitude of untold despair, but so changed was she that he gazed intently into her eyes ere he could recognize her. Izanami was angry that Izanagi had not listened to her commands, for she knew how fruitless would be his efforts. Without the sanction of the ruler of the underworld, she could not return to earth, and this consent she had tried in vain to obtain. Izanagi, hard pressed by the 8 monsters who guard the land of gloom, had to flee for his life. He defended himself valiantly with his sword, then he threw down his headdress, and it was transformed into bunches of purple grapes. He also cast behind him the comb, by means of which he had obtained light, and from it sprang tender shoots of bamboo. While the monsters eagerly devoured the luscious grapes and tender shoots, Izanagi gained the broad flight of steps which led back to earth. At the top he paused and cried to Izanami, "All hope of our reunion is now at an end. Our separation must be eternal." Stretching far beyond Izanagi lay the ocean, and on its surface was reflected the face of his well-beloved daughter, Amaterasu. She seemed to speak, and beseech him to purify himself in the great waters of the sea. As he bathed, his wounds were healed, and a sense of infinite peace stole over him. The life work of the earth-maker was done. He bestowed the world upon his children, and afterwards crossed, for the last time, the many-colored bridge of heaven. The god of the air now spends his days with the heaven-illuminating spirit in her sun-glorious palace. End of The Birth Time of the Gods by Frank Rinder.